Newest area of the brain and the most vulnerable. Nowhere is the importance of social, emotional, and physical health for cognitive health more evident than with prefrontal cortex and executive functions. Prefrontal cortex and executive functions are the first to suffer and suffer the most if we're sad or stressed, lonely, or not physically fit. Conversely, we show better executive functions when we're happy, feel socially supported, and we're physically fit. Stress impairs executive functions and can cause anyone to look as if they have an executive function impairment like ADHD when they don't. You may have noticed that when you're stressed, you can't think as clearly or exercise as good self-control. This just gives a reason for one of the biological reasons for why stress selectively affects prefrontal. Even mild stress dramatically increases the level of the neurotransmitter dopamine in prefrontal. Prefrontal needs dopamine, but mild stress floods prefrontal cortex with dopamine, so it can't function properly. That's not true for any other area of the brain. All these other areas have dopamine, but you don't see the spiking of the gray curve. You only see it for prefrontal. In college students, 1 month of stress in preparation for a major exam disrupts prefrontal cortex functional connectivity. It comes back. When you're sad, you're worse at executive function, you're worse at selective attention. When you're happy, you're better at selective attention. I should mention that nobody's done the study yet, but all the stupid high stakes tests that they're giving at the end of the school years, you know, the standardized tests, I bet you're going to see the same thing in children as they found in the study in college students. It's going to disrupt prefrontal cortex connectivity, and it's going to impair executive functions because it's so stressful. So when you're sad, you're worse at selective attention. When you're happy, you're better at it. People show more creativity when they're happy. The most heavily researched predictor of creativity in social psychology is mood. The most robust finding is that a happy mood leads to greater creativity. It enables people to work more flexibly and to see potential relatedness among unusual and atypical members of categories. It doesn't mean that happier people are more creative than sad people. What it means is that within the individual, in general, you generally tend to be more creative when you're happier than when you're more miserable. If you're stressed, you can't be the parent you want to be. If you're stressed, your kids are going to pick up on it, and it'll cause them to be stressed. And if they're stressed, their executive functions will suffer, and therefore their school performance will suffer. So relax. You're not perfect, you're going to make mistakes. And I can guarantee 100% that worrying about whether you're a good enough parent is not going to improve your parenting. It's only going to make it worse. Imperfect is not the same as worthless. Now you say that's obvious. But how often do you get really down on yourself when you made a mistake? We constantly do this to ourselves. But it's human to make mistakes. Even the people you most respect make mistakes and have done things they regret. Everyone makes mistakes. Everyone is imperfect. Yet each of us is wonderful in our own way, even though we're not perfect. And you can be a terrific parent, even though you're not a perfect parent. Remember, your humanity is more important than your knowledge or skill or doing the textbook perfect thing. Many children are so terrified of making a mistake that they're afraid to try anything new. Children need to feel safe, to push the limits of what they know, to venture into the unknown, to take the risk of making a mistake or being wrong. They need to know it's okay to make a mistake. It's extremely important not to embarrass a child. Children can't relax if they're worried you might embarrass them. Making a mistake is not the worst thing in the world, and you need to let children know it's okay to make mistakes. The only alternative is to stay with what you already know to stop growing, right? By definition, if you go beyond what you know, you don't know. So you have a 50-50 chance of being wrong. The only way to ensure that you don't make a mistake is to stay with what you already know. But then you don't learn anything. In order to grow, you have to take the risk of being wrong. It's okay. The important thing is how you react after you've made a mistake or fallen short of a goal. I love this quote, and I particularly love it because of who said it. You've never failed until you've tried for the last time, and you've never lost until you quit. Samuel Proctor Macy was born in the segregated South in the early 1900s. You know he encountered a lot of discrimination, setbacks, and failure. Yet he rose to become one of the most highly respected and decorated chemists of the 20th century. You haven't failed till you stop trying. Thoughts that help you and children relax. One of the most important findings to emerge from neurobiology is that biology is not destiny. Neuroscience research has shown that experience plays a far larger role in shaping the mind, brain, and even gene expression than ever imagined. Very little is fixed or unchangeable. 90% of our genes are switched off. Okay, people talk about genetic determinism. Most of the genes aren't doing anything. To a large extent, our experiences and our reactions to them determine which genes get turned on and off, and when this happens and whether they stay on. So experience is determining whether the gene has any effect. Experience also sculpts the brain, and the brain changes throughout life, and that's called neuroplasticity. Touch relieves stress. I'll let you read this on your own in the PDF because I'm going way over. Hugs are superb medicine. I'm a big fan of touching. Pets can reduce stress, and I've provided some references on that. Exercise can reduce stress, and I've provided some references. Meditation can reduce stress, but walking meditation is more age-appropriate for little kids than sitting meditation. Little kids are not built to sit for 20 minutes contemplating their breath. It's not going to work. In Montessori classrooms, they have a line on the floor, and the kids walk on the line. And for a little child to walk on a line, whether it's a line on the carpet or in the street outside, is as hard for them as for us to walk on a balance beam. And once they get better at it, you can make it harder. They have to have something on their head or something in a spoon. And one thing you can do is have a game where everybody has a bell, even the teacher, and you're following the leader. Maybe the leader is the most dysregulated kid in the class. But the goal of this game is that nobody should make a sound with their bell. That's walking meditation. But you don't tell them it's walking meditation, you tell them it's a game. And you get immediate feedback when your mind wanders, right? Okay, this is the last time I have a break until the end. So it's the last time if you can't make it to the end, or you have questions or comments. Okay. Okay, we're not just intellects and emotions, we're also social. Our brains work better when we're not feeling lonely or socially isolated, and that's particularly true for prefrontal cortex and executive functions. One group of researchers told a group of subjects to expect that they'd have close relationships throughout their lives. They told another group of subjects the opposite, and they told a third group of subjects unrelated bad news. On simple memorization questions that don't require executive function, all three groups perform comparably. But on logical reasoning that requires executive functions, those told to expect that they'd be lonely perform worse. Other researchers haven't tried to manipulate this, but simply give subjects a survey when they come in the lab. And the survey has questions like, do you feel socially supported? Do you feel lonely? And one research group found that prefrontal cortex functioned less efficiently in those who felt lonely or isolated. We are fundamentally social. We need to belong. We need to fit in and be liked. Children who are lonely or ostracized will have more difficulty learning. And it's not just peers. A close relationship with a caring adult can be huge. We're not just intellects, emotion, and social, we have bodies. And you need your sleep. Lack of sleep will make you look like you have an executive function disorder like ADHD. When you don't, you're simply sleep deprived. Our brains work better when our bodies are physically fit, and that's particularly true for prefrontal cortex and executive functions. The brain doesn't recognize the same sharp division between cognitive and motor function that we impose in our thinking. The same or substantially overlapping brain systems subserve both cognitive and motor function. For example, the area of the brain called the pre-SMA is important for sequential tasks, and it doesn't matter whether they're sequential cognitive tasks or sequential motor tasks. Motor development and cognitive development appear to be fundamentally intertwined. The different parts of the human being are fundamentally interrelated. Each part, cognitive, social, spiritual, emotional, and physical, are affected by and affect the other parts. And I think it's ironic that I'm saying this when many of the people in the room are First Nations, and you know this, and science is just discovering it.